Hi everyone, I'm going to go over using effects to recreate elements, natural elements, and a couple of other features that I really like in After Effects. So the first one is the first composite. I have this one image and I just wanted it to be a little darker, so I just used my layer modes where you can see it here. I could also just simply use the color correction tools. So under effects, you want to make sure you always selected effects and color correction, and I could use either curves or levels, and I can simply make the image much darker. So but sometimes if I want to do something really quickly, I just use the layer modes. So it's my original image. The first one is going to be rain, so I'm going to double click it, and then as you can see, I have my rain happening here. And the way you get to that, you would select your layer, effects. Actually, I'm going to just delete this to show you again. Effects, simulation, rainfall, and then you can see it's kind of not very visible, but you can change some of these settings to make the drops bigger, to make the size bigger if you want to. You can increase or decrease the speed. You can increase the opacity of the rain. I prefer like around 3940. And like, so to me this looks very natural. So that is the one effect. So I'm gonna go over the other one, which is snow. And the snow also, it's you can kind of see if the background is darker, it's more visible. So again, if I'm gonna delete this and then just go to effects, simulation, snowfall. You can see it's not very visible, it's very subtle. So you can kind of again come back and change the opacity to something a little higher. You could increase the size. You could increase the variation. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you could do here to sort of make the snow more, if you want it to be more visible. But it's a pretty subtle one, this one. You can kind of see. So that's the snow. And then we got the galaxy, which is really nice. So the one galaxy, remember, when you add your solid, make sure the solid setting is set to white, because otherwise you're not going to be able to see the actual thing. So this one I've made it really slow, but if I delete this, I'm going to just add it. Basically it's like this. So the one thing that you want to keep in mind, if the number is on the plus or positive, the movement is forward. If it's negative, the movement is backwards. You can also change the setting of your grid. You can also scatter. If I go to negative, you see what, it's much tighter. And then you can also increase or decrease the size, and also modify the speed. So now if I come back and just maybe put this on 1, you see that it's barely moving. And if I put it on, yeah, see, you can kind of see it's barely moving. So that's a really nice way if you want to add like a really subtle animation to your projects. And if you want to move it faster, then you can just move it a lot faster. So that's the Starbust, and I really like this effect a lot. And this other one is the fire one that I went over yesterday, which is this. So this one, you basically add, so I'm going to turn this off and show you again. So you add a new solid. You want to make sure that it's 50% gray, which means this one, the hue saturation 0, and the brightness would be 50. That gives you a 50% gray value. Oops. And then turn this on. Oh, I need a new new solid first. Okay, there we go. And then you want to go to effects. You want to go to fractal noise and grain, fractal noise. Then you want to change some of these settings, contrast, brightness, and change the transform so that it's unlocked. Reduce the contrast or increase the contrast depending on what you're doing. You can create fogs, you can create all kinds of cool stuff with this setting. So I'm gonna just do that. Make the width really high, make the height. Can I actually just play around? Let me see. Some of these would also give you some really interesting effects of these other settings, but let me just go back to where we were. I prefer soft linear. And now I'm going to keyframe. I keyframe the contrast. Then I'm going to keyframe evolution. Come back to a different position in time. You know, you can just play with your contrast a little bit if you want to. You can play with the brightness if you wanted to. Actually, I'm going to go back and just also keyframe the width and the height. And now I can also change these settings a little bit. And now I'm gonna go to my evolution and add maybe like 3. So basically you're gonna get something like this. Maybe I'll get rid of these, not this one. We want to keep the contrast, the transform. I just want to have one set. So you can play around with this one, but let's see here. That's better. So I'm gonna go back to my evolution and maybe just make it more like this. That's better. And like I said, you can just sort of, once you create this, you can come back here and sort of play around with it. See if maybe it looks better if it's a little wider. I think it actually may be better wider. And so on. So just, you know, just experiment with your settings. So now let me just do this one actually. Okay, so now we have this thing going, which it looks pretty good. So now we're going to add this other effect, which is the color correction colorama. And this one, don't be afraid when you see this. You want to go to output cycle and then change this to fire. and then we get something like this, which is what would look really nice as a background element. So that is the fire, snow, and rain. And I'm gonna fire, snow, and rain, and the galaxy effect.